Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today what I'm going to be talking about is tools I started with back in the day. I started as a mechanic in 1978, and these are the tools I started with, and most of them have survived. Some are not here because I've replaced them over the years, but most of all the tools that are here are what I started with, apart from this ratchet, which I bought a couple of years after I started because the ratchet in the set decided to give up the ghost. Anyway, this is what you could expect if you're going to start out and become a motor mechanic. This is what I started with, and this is what you expect to have in your kit. I started out with a small set. These are AF 3/8 drive, and this was in the set. It was very small and quite expensive. It was a week's wages when I started. That with a ratchet. All these parts are original. This is not, like I said. This one, the biggest one I had, was a 13/16, all the way down to 3/8. I then added to that set, as you can see with the ratchet. I bought a Britool ratchet, which has lasted me till now. Excellent quality. These were made in Japan. I think the box they came in was called they were called Taskmaster. Never broken a socket. I lost one once. That's why I have two 1/2" sockets, because I lost one. I bought a replacement and then I found it, so I've got two. Added to that, I added that the following year, which is a Teng Tools flexible 3/8 drive ratchet, still in very good working order, and it's got fine teeth. And I have changed the handle on this. The handle came off about 10 years after I bought it, and I bought one of those cheap Chinese hammers and replaced the handle. Works very well. Along with that, at the time I bought a set of these, again made in Japan. I did have the smaller version, the 1/4 drive, that I broke, and so I've now got only the 1/2" and the 3/8 drive, but again still in good working condition. And what you will need if you're starting is a good selection of extensions. I did buy a kit at the time which are wobble extensions. I'd never seen them before. I think they were the first out. Again made in Japan. Unfortunately I've lost two of them, but it did come in a complete set of 9. I've got the 1/4 drive, 2 1/4 drives, and there were the same in 1/2" drive as well, so I got those. And doing a lot of brakes, an impact driver, most essential when you're doing brakes, especially the old drums, when you need to get the screw out of the drum. And I bought a very cheap set of Chinese made metric sockets to go with these, and they've stood the test of time, apart from one which broke. Didn't use these a lot to start with, because most of the stuff I worked on was AF, and so these didn't get used a great deal. Later on I bought a different set, a better quality set, but these got me by. The ratchet that came with this set met its demise within several days. and I had gashed knuckles to prove it. So cheap tools don't always do the job. And of course, oh yes, this plug spanner came with that set as well. I rounded this because I needed it to do a Rover V8, and couldn't quite get the socket, it was too thick, so I just pointed the end slightly with the grinder. It still works quite well, but this was the one that came with this set, and then I bought a 1/2 inch drive one to go with my 1/2 inch drive kit. Okay, can get rid of these. Oh, one more thing for the 3/8 drive, and that is a bicycle chain that I shortened, and I used one of these universal joints to fix it here so that I could use it as a strap wrench. So it's ideal for oil filters. You can get in just about anywhere, and with your extension it closes up as you tighten it, and I've never failed to get an oil filter off with that. That is absolutely brilliant. Okay. Oh yeah, that kit came with a little breaker bar as well, with a T-handle, which I thought was quite useful, ideal for when you're turning plugs out. Of course, back in the day we didn't have the electric ratchets that people have got today. Another one of my first tools was a vice grip. I used to do a lot of welding repairs on bodywork, and this was one of the first things I ever bought when I was doing that. Still works really well, a bit on the dirty side now, and you can see where it's been touched by the welder quite a few times. The chrome is coming off, but it has had a hard life. Excellent little tool, something you can't be without if you're doing patch repairs. Right. Quarter drive set. I've got a few of the early inverted Torques there that came with this little cheap set. There's no need to spend a fortune on these sets because they're only for small fasteners, and you're not applying tons and tons of torque, and these have lasted very well. I think I've only broken 2 in the whole time I've had them, and they were extremely cheap. So it just proves you don't have to spend a fortune if you're careful with the tools. If you are going to be exerting a lot of torque, then go to a larger size, a 3/8 or a 1/2 inch. Now for my 1/2 inch set, my grandfather gave me this. I think it's about a 1952 snap-on ratchet. About 3 years ago I fitted the repair kit, used it for years and years and years, all the way through until about 2010, and I broke a tooth on it, on the ratchet itself, and Snap-on were kind enough to send me a kit if I returned the broken parts. So that is now fully functioning again. I don't use it very much now because it is a very coarse ratchet, so in confined spaces it is a bit difficult, but it has stood the test of time. This one I bought probably 2 years after I started because it's finer teeth and it's a Draper Expert. My favourite ratchet, works well every time, never broken it, never had to service it. Used all these tools every day for over 25 years, and this is still like it came from the packet. Absolutely beautiful thing. Another thing, a speed ratchet. well, a speed brace I should say. And again, these from the wobble sockets. And a straight, and that's all the extensions I had at the time. I've now got a good collection of them because it's handy to have as many as you can get, but you don't need to have everything to start out with. What tools I've got here, you could do 90% of the jobs on an older car. Newer cars are a bit different. They need special tools and Allen keys and torques and all the rest of it. But for the older vehicles, this is all you needed really, and this would see you through your lifetime. I haven't used this now for years, but I still keep it. Okay, these again, they're made in Japan. Again, really good quality. I've never had a problem with anything that I bought that was made in Japan. The early stuff anyway. Early Hilka, which I had quite a lot of at the time. I've got my Hilka 1/2 inch sockets, which I'll show you in a minute. And I think the only problem I had was losing them, or losing some, which I have replaced over the years. Again, if you buy snap-on or really expensive tools, they tend to sprout little legs and walk away. So working with loads of people in a work environment, things tend to get borrowed and not put back, and I'd rather replace something like this than a snap-on socket, because they don't warranty the lost ones. As you can see, I've got a couple here which are oddballs. Most of these are 12 point, but the ones that I have broken or got lost or went walkies, I've replaced. And of course, then I've got my AF set, all the way from 3/8 again up to, what's this, 1.25 inches I think it is, no, 1 1/8. Those are all the sockets that I'd ever needed. Now of course there's more in need for deep sockets, stubby sockets, all that sort of thing, because engine compartments have got that more difficult to work in tighter spaces. Everything's packed in, whereas in the time I started, it was well, you could more or less climb in the engine bay with the vehicle. Another thing that I got, this was expensive when I bought it, so a Bahco adjustable, 15 inch, and I bought this because at the time didn't have spanners that went up to 30 mil, and this was ideal for taking off the larger nuts that I work, not larger things that I needed to take off. And it stood the test of time well, hardly any play in it, still works 100%, it's not bent, closes well. I've kept it lubricated and it's still used now, more or less every day. Excellent piece of kit. I believe that these were made by Bahco for snap-on, and that would explain probably why this was very expensive. Next thing, pliers. My grandfather again, who was a mechanic years and years and years ago, he actually retired in 1961, gave me these, which are of course made by Lucas, the Prince of Darkness, and the cutting blades on them are still like they were new. I believe this is probably about 1950s, but best pair of pliers I've got for pulling and gripping and cutting. You can actually cut a 6-inch nail with these and it doesn't even feel like you're cutting a nail. Absolutely brilliant pair of pliers. Again, hardly any play in them. Been used loads and loads and loads. Excellent things. This one, I suppose you call it a linesman pliers. Why, I don't know. But again, really cheap pliers these. Had them for years. They still cut, and the blade is still unmarked. But again, it's the older tools are quality. This again, unbranded. Had them since 1978. These and these. The handles are worn off, and I put the 90-degree bend in these because I needed some 90-degree pliers, and after bending them I decided I'd buy another set, so I bought these at the same time, just afterwards. And both nice sets of pliers, been working. Don't use them as much these days, but they still work, and if I need a pointy nose pliers, ideal. My circlip pliers, I bought a set of these. The spring is now missing off these. It came with 3 different heads that are reversible. Not the best piece of kit in the world, but when I was starting out it was something I needed, so I bought these, and I don't regret buying them, but I should have spent a little bit more money at the time. These were Kamasa, which again was a fairly good Japanese make, but these got me by for a few years until I could find a decent set. Electrical pliers or crimping pliers, absolute garbage. These jaws have separated slightly so it doesn't crimp anymore. Cheap, cheerful, don't buy one. Pair of tin snips, locking ones, but still work very well. These are spring loaded. Like I said, we used to do a lot of welding, a lot of patching, so these were invaluable at the time. And last but not least, with the pliers, a mole grip. My first mole grip. Have many since. As you can see, is well beaten up, but still perfectly functioning. It's been ground and filed, and it's got me out of a lot of tight scrapes. Anything stuck, these are the things to go for. Brilliant things. Spanners I had at the time, got them here. These are the ones left over. Again, brake spanner. I was used to work a lot on minis, the early minis, and that was the size for the bleed nipple, and that was for adjusting the brakes. Again, reasonable tool. This has slightly started to round off after about 5 or 6 years. Still does work, but it just started to round at the beginning there. Then these are all my AF spanners. I had a set of these Jedors or Gedor or whatever you want to call them, and I have 4 of them left out of a set of 7, I think there were. I still, believe it or not, have the 1/2 inch 9/16, and I think the slightly smaller one as well. And I bought this one, a Palmara one. This is Spanish steel, a lot slimmer, nice spanner, very, very strong. Ideal. This, again, another Spanish spanner. I had a whole set of these given to me by my grandfather, brand new. He bought them for me when I was 9 years old, and I have two, maybe three of them left. Unfortunately lost a few along the way, like you do. And two 1/2-inch spanners made in Germany, Teng tools, that's it. Good quality again. One I got out the back of an old Datsun I found that was being scrapped. And another Jedor or Gador that I've had for years. Those are the only ones left of my AF set. Not used anymore because everything now is metric. I bought these mostly Hilker. Had these, like, again since about that time, 1978. Used every day for 20 odd years, and again the most useful size is lost. The 10mm, which I've replaced, and the 11, and that's gone as well. And I didn't have this size, the 26, so I bought that, and that is a Palmera, a Spanish one, which I added to the set. Again, just goes to prove you don't need to spend a fortune. These weren't very expensive when I bought them. Haven't broken any of them. Right, next thing, screwdrivers. Right, these are the ones I started with, screwdrivers. I had a set of electrically insulated ones. Still got most of them. Used these an awful lot because it had a Phillips and the tiny pointed screwdriver, which is ideal for. I used to use that for getting old O-rings out, believe it or not. Most useful. I bought this Sykes Pickford one, a long one, so that I could get at difficult to reach hose clamps, so you can poke it right through. Not only that, ideal for carburetors when you're adjusting the mixtures and idle and what have you, because you can stay away from it and adjust. Also used it at the time as a stethoscope. Put your ear to one end and put the point on whatever you want to listen to, and use it as a stethoscope. Hear all the nasty ticking and knocking that's coming from the big end. Stubby screwdriver that my grandfather gave me. Never used it much, but it was handy to have. Did have a full set of these. Again, I think these are Hilker. Very good quality. Only trouble was most of them sprouted little legs and walked away. This one I still have. This is a square shank on it. Chrome vanadium. Hit it once with a hammer and chipped it, but still works, still good. This one's a little bit on the bent side because I've used this as a pry bar, but the tips are still excellent condition. And a big Phillips one here for door handles, as was this one, bigger again. Ideal for doing door shut handles and things like that. The clips that go into the body. And couldn't get by without one of these. This is a valve key remover, or valve remover if you want, you know, one of these tyre valves. Had that for many years. Used to keep that in my pocket in work. Probably used to go through doing a few tyres every day. Somebody'd come in with a puncture. And then this was a purchase from like a pound shop. Guy I worked with said at the time that won't last you 5 minutes because it had a wooden handle. The steel was good because the steel is still, the tip is still very good. The handle, on the other hand, didn't fare very well. I changed it for a Stanley chisel handle. I heated up the shaft at the end and then stuffed that in with some glue, and it's been like that ever since. So it's nearly 50 years old now, and it still is very, very useful. Use that quite a bit, mostly as a lever. As you can see, it's got a little bend in it, but the tip still excellent. Using hammers and punches. This thing was my go-to everyday hammer. It's got a couple of nails in the end of it. Still the original handle. Use this for, well, you still use it every day. Very, very cheap. Bought it in a Chinese shop, but the amount of work it's done, unbelievable. This one, given to me by my grandfather. Ideal tapping hammer when you want to tap punching or center punching, anything like that. Ideal for that. And then what I call my gasket hammer. I found the head off that, made the little handle, and I use that to tap gaskets with. Just the job, nice and light, does the job very well. This thing, which I hate with a passion, fine for taking off totally knackered ball joints. If they are kaput, ideal for taking them off. That and a big hammer, job done. All your steering joints, all those knuckles, everything like that. If you want to save them and save the rubbers, don't use one of these. But all I had at the time, the guy I worked with had a clamp version, so he used to borrow this sometimes, and I used to borrow the clamped version. I've got a clamp version of my own now to get him off with. But yeah, this is a Sykes Pickfront one, very good quality, and it stood the test of time. And then punches. I bought these punches in one go, this lot. Those there. Punches and chisels all in one go. They were painted bright orange, and I have used and abused all of them, and they've still got a reasonable edge. They've been dressed a couple of times because they were mushrooming over, so I dressed them every now and again. And then I bought these two separately, little punches. One I changed into a centre punch, and one taper punch. Not very expensive, haven't broken one, so make up your own mind on that one. All that remains is for me to put this back in the box, and I hope it's given you some ideas of what you actually need when working. There are a few things here that I haven't got, that I bought later on. For example, electrical testers and things like that. Things these days they're a must. You must have. But for normal DIY sort of meddling on your on an old car, this is the sort of thing you can expect you'll need, unless of course you've got a BMW or a Volkswagen or an Audi, in which case you're going to have to spend on Torx, Allens, and internal Torx, or e-Torx I think they call them, and other specialist tools. And the deeper you go into these things, the more special tools you'll need. But the best thing to do is to buy them as you need them. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this and would like to see more. And that will be it for this week. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye now.